In Flanders, on the Christmas morn, the trenched foemen lay, the German and the Brit born, and it was Christmas Day. The red sun rose on fields accursed, the gray fog fled away, but neither cared to fire the first, for it was Christmas Day. They called from each to each across the hideous disarray, for terrible had been their loss. Oh, this is Christmas Day. Their rifles lay, all they set aside, one impulse to obey. 'Twas just the men on either side, just men and Christmas Day. They dug the graves for all their dead, and over them did pray. And Englishmen and Germans said, how strange a Christmas Day. Between the trenches then they met, shook hands, and end did play at games on which their hearts were set on happy Christmas Day. Not all the emperors and kings, financiers and they, who rule us could prevent these things, for it was Christmas Day. O ye who read this truthful rhyme, from Flanders kneel and say, God speed the time when every day shall be as Christmas Day. Rape born, orphan adopted, blessed bastard, indigenous initiated, martial arts mastered, Psyops and special forces served, decades of duty in DEA and DIA, intelligence inducted, sabotaged and slandered, corruption crucibled, deep state betrayed, Yeshua saved, whistleblower warrior, rejecting revenge, repurposed in redemption as chaplain, leader, teacher, and truth teller. Now America's intelligence officer, following God, leading my family, and rallying all patriots to rescue our republic by restoring a virtuous populace. Welcome, I'm Jeff Prather, and this is the Prather Point. And that is a poem, a carol from Flanders by Frederick Niven, and it recounts the story of the spontaneous 1914 World War I Christmas truce along the lines of the Western Front, which was, of course, a cabal war completely. There was no reason for that war to ever have happened in the first place. And so over 90 years ago, a group of bedraggled Scottish soldiers and Camerons, mostly from Lanark, spotted Germans clambering into the open air with no signs of hostile intent. They were on the Western Front, near Lille, battlefield. They held their fire, but the Germans came right up to the trench and offered cigars. It was the mythical Christmas truce had begun, when men laid down their weapons, shook hands, and embraced the season's message of peace on earth. There were plenty of reasons why the truce should never have happened: explicit orders, wartime hatred, and good military sense. But there were many reasons which fostered precisely the opposite. Extraordinary circumstances often lead to extraordinary events. The first Battle of Ypres in October and November had brought horrific casualty figures. The British lost more than 50,000 men, the Germans perhaps twice as many. But a lull followed as both sides awaited replacements for the savage losses. The huge armies dug in and watched each other as close neighbors, able to hear one another's chatter and smell their cooking. Back home, both Britain and Germany were thoroughly enjoying the war, and by way of participating, swamped the mail with presents for the troops. In fact, the public went berserk. In the 6 days preceding Christmas, every soldier, sailor, and nurse was sent cards by the king and queen, plus a present from a special fund associated with Princess Mary, the 17-year-old daughter of George V. This dislocated distribution systems in 3 countries. Ammunition and food were delayed because of it. Christmas had become an obsession. Germany's deep love for Christmas manifested itself in swamping their supply lines with 500,000 fir trees, a commodity particularly suited to fouling up any postal system. The spirit of the season was, though, unstoppably afoot. On Christmas Eve, frost hardened the mud and froze the pools. When night fell almost simultaneously, the Germans mounted trees on their parapets and lit candles and lanterns. Thousands of British watched in fascination as the wondrous sight was joined by the distant haunting sound of men singing Silent Night. There cannot have been a moment like this in either history of war or in the performing arts. Every survivor spoke of the abiding impact of this one carol. In many cases, the British responded with a carol of their own, applause or calls for more. Almost always the second was Tannenbaum. When the British sang, O Come All Ye Faithful, the Germans accompanied with the Latin version, Adeste Fidelis. Seaforth Highlanders, just to the north of the Plaguesworth Wood, were unusually the first to begin the singing, but were spellbound with the returned carol. Corporal Ferguson led most of his company into no man's land for cigarettes and handshakes, accompanied by calls of Fergie, Fergie, so that the Germans imagined this to be a Highland greeting and politely repeated it. The Belgians and French, holding more than 400 miles of front, shared the same experiences, but very much at arm's length. The invader was their soil, and more than 300,000 French had fallen in August alone. The Reverend Ezelment Adams chaplain to the Gordon Highlanders, organized a joint service in no man's land with prayers in German and English. Both sides wrote home using phrases like fairy tale, day of fiction, and extraordinary. Rations and cigarettes were swapped, even though the British hated the German tobacco. Buttons and regimental flashes were exchanged, the ultimate souvenir being a pickle hub, the spiked helmet. The romantic version of the game of football was played, has a weak basis in fact. There were no references to how neighbors played, but the ground was so tore up, it was unlikely that actually happened. But as its simplest, it was a triumph for the human spirit when the ordinary soldier called off the conflict for Christmas, when the will for peace prevailed over the might of war and the deep state cabals that started it. When Christmas came, there were numerous orders forbidding fraternization. There was no truce in 1916, but by 1917, friendly meetings were unthinkable. By 1918, the armistice had been signed, and the memory of Christmas truce of 1940 slipped into legend. But it did happen, and that is the power of Christmas. So very glad to be with you all. Got a surprise guest checking in shortly. I believe Michael Yon will be with us. Merry Christmas to you, Earl Jackson, as well. And so breaking, Brown looks like a China virus psyop. I really want to get into this. This is really important to talk about, although I won't go over today because I got to do a guest appearance with Sean at SGT. So remember the deep state's lessons learned from 9/11. No more Twin Tower rally points. They took the Twin Towers off the TSA patches as well, because everybody united around that. Leave them divided, dazed, and confused. No more resolutions, just cascade crisis to generate fear and allow for more government control. This is why the FBI lie on the absurd Tyrrell Island group happened now. Classic satanically sourced Hegelian dialectic: create the problem, present the solution to the created problem, rinse and repeat. Because 4 days later, Brown University shooter still at large and bizarre anomalies mount. And they're not saying much, but of course, there are rumors that the shooter shouted Allah Akbar, but they're putting that down. This is exactly what they did with the China virus. And I was fooled initially by this. The China virus, it comes out of China, comes out of the Chinese lab. No, it comes out of DARPA. It comes out of Fort Detrick. It's run by the CIA. It's not the China virus, but they build that psyop and they're slowly letting that happen again. So this is slowly going to unfold as it's a Muslim terrorist, even though Brown University had this big document showing how the United States government was supporting Israel and supporting the Gaza genocide. So why would a Muslim hit this? This is because this is a setup. This is another psyop. This is why Brown looks like a China virus setup. Exactly. And so remember, there was never any resolution with the China virus in the end. They never said, yep, it's out of China. It was really Fauci and DARPA and Detrick bringing that over to China to then be released and then covering it up so it would slowly be uncovered so everyone would think about it being China. This is the same thing. It's a very sophisticated psyop, because this is what the intelligence agencies do. They don't collect intelligence, they collect people, they run psyops. False flags are not the exception, they are the rule. And that's why they are simply building this up right now. But there are no answers. The Brown University president, Christina Paxson, gets $3.1 million a year. She makes $12,000 a day, $510 million given to Brown this year. No cameras work, no sirens work. Why? Because it is a setup. 4 days into the investigation, no identified suspect, no motive, low quality surveillance footage, although there's surveillance cameras all over the place. Brown University scrubbing all online pages and references to student Mustafa Karbouch shortly after the shooting, accusations of burying evidence. Officials, including the Rhode Island AG, shutting down speculation about Karbouch, calling it a dangerous road, because they want everyone to focus on that. And so everybody's focused on the Islamic problem in America. The Islamic problem is real. It is a danger. in America, but it would have no purchase without the deep state's Praetorian Guard running all of this stuff, because everybody would see through it that Islam is a false religion. And Keystone Cash, yeah, is on the case there, exactly. So that is what I think is happening. I don't think anybody else has picked up upon this. This is a very sophisticated psyop. They're going to slowly let this stuff simmer and uncover. So it looks like people have really uncovered something, but they're uncovering what you want to uncover. Why? So that you focus on the Islam problem in America, which is a problem, but you ignore the much worse problem, which is the Zionist control of our government. So that's why this is breaking. Brown looks like a China virus psyop, but there will be no resolution, because if there is resolution, then of course there is focus. However, going after the Middle Eastern Arabs again will suit the Israeli Zionist lobby perfectly. So that's the first thing I wanted to get to. Then Australian cop drops terrorist and destroys the Australian government's DEI and pistol ban at the same time. So I covered this a lot on Sunday, but not only does an old white male 15-year veteran detective Cesar Barraza hit both rifle-armed terrorists with just his compact Glock 19 at about a 40-yard distance, which is good shooting, especially for a cop, by the way, ending the attack, killing one, wounding and disabling the other attacker, while the female ponytailed Aussie cops did not draw their weapons for 20 minutes, hid, wouldn't let go of cars. When one Australian woman tried to pick up a weapon and fired, one of the Australian female cops stopped her, because this is the disaster of DEI and ponytail police and chiefs of color that have dominated law enforcement throughout the world now. Is he also is simultaneously destroying the Australian government's disastrous DEI, diversity, equity, inclusivity, and their handgun ban policy, because he stopped them with a handgun and they had bolt action rifles. So the whole thing with banning handguns, of course, they're going to pass more legislation because that's the plan. And there's lots of fingerprints of Mossad all over this again. But he fouled this up. And also, of course, the brave Muslim, I believe, from Pakistan or India, who disarmed the one shooter, changed that as well. So that is very, very significant as well, that this single cop has dropped the terrorist and then destroyed the Australian government's DEI and pistol ban completely. And then, of course, we are hearing back from Candace. She's back. A lot of people are like, oh, Candace is going to sell out. It looks more like Tucker has sold out, saying, hey, Trump is getting tough on Israel. Which I don't see any evidence of that. There's a little bit of talk that he's upset, but he's still going right along with Israel. But this meeting that Candace had with Erica Kirk, she's saying, hey, I thought I would get some answers. I got no answers. I got more definite lies, very clear lies. They're all of the witnesses, from the security guy to this Mike McCoy character and the dad, they're all caught in massive, obvious lies. The Egyptian planes looking like they're heading back to Israel. But the real breakthrough is that there was a white SUV paralleling the shooter as if they were kind of guiding him. And a sharp cop pulled this guy over, and it was an FBI agent who credentialed the cop so he could leave. Well, that's exactly the same thing that happened in Garland, Texas, when a FBI agent brought two ISIS shooters with AK-47s to the Draw Muhammad event, and they followed him in his car. He was in his own car, and then when the Garland cop dropped him, then the FBI agent tried to flee. He was detained, and he credentialed the cops to get away. This pattern is very clear. They are in on all of this. all of this stuff is being run, these false flags, by the government and covered up by the FBI, and they pull their credentials when they're done and they're out. This is the most damning evidence yet that this is happening. Remember, John Michael Cullen has totally disappeared. He noticed the high-speed drones at the Charlie assassination, said that can only be the government doing that. He also said there was a DDoS shutdown of iPhones because everybody recorded it. That would have to be NSA or NRO, National Reconnaissance Office, or Israeli 8200 doing something like this. But regardless, these are government-run operations. These are government-run false flags. It's quite clear that this is happening. Remember Kyle Rittenhouse, where there's the FBI running behind the child molester and the wife beater, chasing Kyle Rittenhouse, who just got married, by the way, down the road with the drone footage overhead. This is exactly what happens all the time. And the Turtle Island terror group, which I just laugh at every time I hear this. Turtle Island, that is a term for America, used by natives, used by Indians, is really interesting because the timing is just like with Bongino leaving, because Bongino's just fed up and he's saying, whining, oh, the job is hard and it's hard on my family life. No shit. All of us know that. But this Turtle Island setup looks exactly like the typical FBI terrorism setup, where they develop the whole thing, they set it up, they run it, and then they say, look, we've solved something, because they want to have credentials and look like they're doing something, especially with Bongino leaving. But I have a very special guest I want to get to. Been trying to get him on for a long time. He's been here before. He's the Ernie Pyle of our generation, former Special Forces soldier like me. If you don't know who Ernie Pyle is, he was the G.I. Joe commentator who won the Pulitzer Prize but didn't live to get it. If you haven't ever seen the great Burgess Meredith movie, G.I. Joe, black and white World War II film, watch that. But Michael was gracious enough to fit us in. So, Mike, so glad to have you back. Welcome.
Man, I've been trying to get on. I'm over in Netherlands. Masako, my wife, and I have just spent 2 weeks with Catherine Austin Fitts. In fact, we're still with her. Actually, Masako just had to fly back to Japan. But we Catherine Austin Fitts is quite brilliant. So we've been just around the table with the maps. Jim Fennell came in from Switzerland. It's been amazing. A lot of research, and then I've actually got a 48-hour vacation. So that was when I was like, Jeff, let's get on. Thank
you. I know you've been trying hard for quite some time. Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, and thanks for being patient, because you can see, I wish you were with me for a week. You'll see what it's like. Yeah.
No, I know. I'm tired of traveling. Like, I don't know how you get the energy to keep doing that these days. But tell me about what you're working on and all the planning that you're doing and seeing.
Well, the things that we see in Netherlands or United Kingdom or Ireland, all these different, Canada, it's Japan, it's the same stuff. It has a different flavor in every area, like Thailand, but it's the same war that's on against all of these countries, right? Like, let's talk about Thailand as an example. I used to have an office in Chiang Mai. Actually, I wrote the last 2 pages of one of the prime minister's books, Abhisit. The name of the book is The Simple Truth. I actually titled the book. And what I'm getting to is I've been all over Thailand. I know a little bit about it that's not from the newspapers, right? And Thailand is the hyphen in Indo-Pacific security. It's very important, as you know. And you see in the last 4 years or so, about 20,000 licenses have been issued for the distribution, retail, production, and wholesale of cannabis, right?
Now, I've got listeners who write to me from Thailand exactly about that.
It's incredible, and because what did Paul Harvey say in 1963? If I were the devil, right? Now I'm in Amsterdam right now, right? And you go down on the streets and they smell like dope, right? And obviously the dope heads will say, "What about alcohol, man?" You know what I mean? As if it's a choice. Should I be drunk or high? You know what I mean? It's like, hello, dope head.
Well, the
right?
argument
Actually,
always
don't
is
do
that
either, right? You know.
marijuana guys don't get violent like drunks do.
Oh, yes, they do. That's where the word hash, the word assassin came from hashin, because they used to use hash to and dope smokers get just as violent as alkies. In fact, today I was with an Afghan today, a refugee, and keep in mind I spent 2 years in Afghanistan, so we could immediately kind of, I kind of know a little bit about where he came from. He came from Kandahar, actually, where I spent a lot of time. But anyway, so he's a refugee. And we were talking about the dope here, right? I spent about more than 20 minutes with him. And he's talking about, look at all, they're smoking dope right here. And he goes, "It's dangerous here at night." This is an Afghan that came from the war. He's like, "I can get stabbed here at night." He's talking about him. He's like, "I can get stabbed here tonight." Walking around. He's like, they do so much drugs, so much pornography, and they're into this trans thing. He goes, the people don't respect this. He's talking about the people like him that are Afghans. They don't respect it. And now keep in mind that how this plays out. Somebody said earlier today, like, the idea when Christopher Columbus or whatever came over to the Americas, and the various people who did, and they found the savages running around naked or whatever doing their thing, and they're like, they're savages. But that's basically, as somebody said earlier today, that's the way it looks to people coming into a place like San Francisco or Amsterdam. I mean, the amount of dope on the streets right out my window is intense, right? I mean, it's like Washington, D.C. It's like San Francisco or Portland. You walk, I've been in so many Antifa protests. They're always doped up. Antifa dudes, very violent, highly doped up. They smoke cannabis like crazy. And then you get the lecture. No, people don't do violence when they're on cannabis. I'm like, listen, you're too doped up to even talk to. You're dumbed down, right? And the thing is this, keep in mind, Netherlands, the Dutch people, the Frisian people, the rest, these are some of the smartest people God ever created, right? But they're being dumbed down, right? Just like the United States, we created some of the most incredible people ever to walk the face of the earth. But collectively, I come back to my country, the United States, and I spend most of my time downrange. I come home and I'm like, my country is dumbed down. I can see it. The behavior is erratic often. You see, people behaving in ways that, I don't generally see in a lot of other countries. And I'm seeing it actually some here in Netherlands. I see that the Dutch people can be aggressive to each other now in ways that I don't remember in the past, seeing that here. Right. And I wonder what's causing it. Is it the jabs? Is it, radio frequency stuff? I don't know. Is it cannabis? I don't know, but it's clearly happening.
No, well, there are studies now showing that there are psychological changes that happen after getting the jabs as well. But you're totally right about everybody being dumbed down. And that's purposeful, because if you're going to sell communism and you're going to sell despotism, you can't have anybody that looks at history and understands the math, so you've got to do that. And by the way, didn't the new Afghan government got rid of the opium product by just guys with sticks out there knocking down the plants? No high-speed, expensive $billion State Department DEA program. They just got guys with sticks knocking down opium problem.
That's what the Afghan refugee was telling me today. He's like, when the Taliban came, they got rid of the opium. I'm like, when I was in Afghanistan, it looked like the Wizard of Oz. I mean, there was so much opium out there. It was over the top, right? I mean, and I was asking so many DEA guys and generals and everybody else, like British and American, why is all this dope here? Right? I mean, why is there so much? Now, keep in mind.
Yeah, I was on a snowcap guy. What came after snowcap was fast teams. The foreign assistance special teams were over there. But what were they doing? They certainly weren't destroying the opium crop.
Keep in mind the dope heads. Dope heads will say, "You don't know anything about cannabis, man. Nope is not this or whatever." If you see my library on intoxicants, those dope heads that are always saying these ridiculous things, hopefully would shut up, but they might not because they're doped up. But you know, where did the word dope even come from? It may have come from actually opium. Nobody's quite sure, but it may have come from opium, where you're stick, because they used to call opium dope as well. There's many things that were called dope. If you look in the 1800s, some of the things that are called dope include cocaine, include opium, include cannabis. I mean, there's many things that have been called dope. But the dope may have been called it may have come from opium, because it's like putty that you can put in a ship or whatever. You know, the opium, I've seen quite a lot of opium in Afghanistan, but the thing is the Taliban did get rid of the opium because it was destroying their people, right? And now you've got Afghans here looking at a bunch of doped up people and just insane stuff that is on the streets that any decent human would not want to. Despite all the things I've seen in the world, I don't like it. Like, for instance, we walked by a barber shop last week. I'll send you the photos of this. And they've got dolls in the window of this barber shop of baby heads. One of them's got a cigarette in its mouth. Baby heads, right? I mean, completely in a sane world, the police would be in there going, what's going on here? I mean, you know, you're allowed to do that, but this is really spooky. If you looked at it, I'll send you the photos. But this sort of stuff is normal around here, you know, and normal in other places too that I see in California, right?
Well,
you go up to Oregon and Portland, and there's freaking, and California as well, needles on the ground, you know, where they're doing drugs, crap all over the place. You know, it's a major weapon. The intoxicants, keep in mind, one of the major weapons, the major weapon that we used against the Indians was firewater. It was alcohol. Now, in the East, it's often opium, right? And the Chinese love to play professional victim. They're like, oh, it's all look what the British did to us. But let's do a truth audit here. The you know, professional victims are always predators. We all know that, right? And the Chinese have been using opium as a weapon since, like, Mao had, I think, at least 30,000 hectares under opium at one point, according to one book. Anyway, if that's true, I can't audit that, right? But he was clearly using opium as a weapon. Mao was, and the Chinese were using opium as a weapon in the 1700s. They're not just victims. They still use drugs as weapons, and they did before the British War with the Opium War. And many Chinese were involved with the Opium War. You know, they always blame, like, you know, it was the bad white people, especially the British, that came and did this Opium War, but many Chinese were directly involved, right? Just like when it came to slavery, many of the slave owners, inconvenient truth, were blacks, right? You know, and I mean, that's just the facts, right? And there's slavery all across Africa today, right? Same thing with the opium. The Chinese are not innocent victims. They got their licks in. There were licks gotten in on them by the British. There's for sure. And the Chinese have gotten plenty of revenge. But they've been doing the same thing. They were doing it in Formosa, as an example. One book that I got from a Canadian dentist, his name was McKay, in the 1800s. He was talking about he was in Formosa, which is Taiwan today, right? So he was in Formosa, this Canadian missionary dentist, and he was saying he called them wily Chinese traders with their intoxicants, or, you know, they come in and they just wreck the indigenous people in Formosa, right? This is, you know, so it's not like the Chinese, we were just here, they were playing with the abacus, doing our numbers or playing Go or whatever. And then the British came in with the opium and doped us all out. You know, that's not what happened. Right. And so what I'm getting to is, if you read back in the 1800s, Chinese were pushing opium into Siam. And so opium, or let's say intoxicants, whether actually many sorts, and including tobacco, actually have been actually money in many cases. Opium, you know, we always look at gold and copper and silver as, you know, money, but there's a lot of things that have been used as money. Some of those would be like oil or wheat or whatever, right? But they're not durable, obviously. But a lot of people have used opium, and opium is semi-durable. Opium can last for years, actually, and it can withstand a lot of abuse. That's why, and the value density is, I mean, that much opium is worth a lot of money. You know what I mean? And so that's why you can grow that stuff and you know, get it off the poppy there in a place like Afghanistan, load it onto donkeys and take them over the Hindu Kush, and it only gets more valuable up the chain, right? By the time it lands on the streets in Amsterdam or London, you know, every step of the way. Unlike tomatoes, if you pick a tomato or grapes or whatever and you sell those in the local market, that's the end of that chain, right? But if there's something like opium, there's people all along the way that just make more and more money on it, or cocaine, whatever, right? So it's got a you know, a chain of beneficiaries, right? Until it lands on the streets in a place like this, dopes people up, sucks the wealth out. That's why in 2006 I wrote those dispatches when I was in Afghanistan called The Perfect Evil. And I was describing this dynamic where, you know, this, you know, like Paul Harvey said, basically in 1963, I think it was, you know, anyway, at the end of the day, the drugs are a major weapon, and Trump is trying to reduce and make cannabis more accessible across the United States. And of course, the dope heads will go, "What about alcohol, man? It's about my freedom, man." I'll tell you what. Let me tell you about your freedom. It will be gone as these borders remain open. You're going to get killed. Right? This is not a joke. This is straight up warfare. This isn't like it's going to be an inconvenience or something. No, you'll get killed. Right? It's that serious. Tens of millions of people have come into Europe, and tens of millions have come into the United States. They are still coming. They're not coming in the same mechanisms they were before, but they will again. All of those people are still in place. The IOM, the highest Catholic charities, all those people that were I saw IOM today in Schiphol Airport here in Amsterdam.
What about the Darien camp that you broke?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The IOM is the one that runs most of the invasions through the Darien Gap, right? IOM, right? I saw it with my own eyes hours ago today in Amsterdam at Schiphol Airport. IOM, their office is open. It's a ticket desk in Terminal 3. I was there, and I've seen it's been there at least 3 or 4 years. The first time I saw it was 3 or 4 years ago. And I went there today, and there it was. And I watched the lady do the paperwork for, you know, a migrant or a refugee or something. And she gave him an envelope that said IOM on it. And she walked him off. They always escort him to the gate and all that. So they're smiling.
They're still coming through the Darien.
No, well, that was Schiphol Airport today. But no, there's not large numbers coming through the Darien Gap right now. There's not. However, the camps are still there. The camps are still there, and the infrastructure of the NGOs is still there. In the City of Knowledge, called the City of Knowledge in Panama City, at the former Fort Clayton. It's called Ciudad del Saber, City of Knowledge. It's right next to the Panama Canal, right?
I remember Clayton.
You've been there before. You've been there before. I mean, that was the old U.S. Army South headquarters, right? Yeah. And now it's United Nations, you know, playground.
I spent a lot of time, Corey Heights, working South Contra projects. Yeah. So I say that, I don't know if you agree, that part of the Chinese unrestricted warfare effort is through fentanyl, which I think Trump correctly just designated as WMD.
It is,
but because it's never been like, I mean, it can be used, but as a drug, but really the way it's mixed with other drugs, cocaine or whatever, is really as a biological or chemical weapon. Biological and chemical weapons are worse than nuclear weapons. People don't know that, but that's the case. So I think Trump is doing a good job in that regard. But you're saying he is in favor of letting the Chinese take over the marijuana fields in America from the Hmong.
I haven't seen him say, you know, I didn't say that actually, but it's clear that many Chinese are coming in and growing marijuana in places like Maine and Oregon.
Well, Oklahoma. And he's letting 600,000 more come in.
Yeah. But I mean, I didn't say specifically that he's letting them take it over. I don't know, but I mean, there's still a lot of people growing it that are Americans, actually, but the Mexican cartels as well.
Well, out where I'm at in Oklahoma, at least, the Chinese are taking over from the Hmong. So it's going from small family to, I think, again, a part of the Chinese unrestricted warfare strategy to weaken the enemy, just kind of like TikTok. Do you agree with that?
Oh, they're clearly using, like in Canada and across the United States, the Chinese come in and they're huge in the drug market. Listen, if you're the enemy and you want to use an ultimate weapon, that's intoxicants. I mean, that you're draining your enemy of their resources. While, keep in mind, if you have a family of, I don't know, 8 people, let's say, semi-large family today, and just one of them under that roof is is an alcoholic or some sort of other drug addict, prescriptions, whatever. Alcohol is a drug too, obviously. Or you have a gambling problem, which obviously the government's deeply involved in. Just one person under your roof has one of those severe problems, right? That'll disrupt the entire house. That's like getting a missile into your window, right? And so, it's not just my body, my choice. No, you're a drug addict, and now you're my neighbor, and now you're breaking into my window because you're a drug addict, right? It's not your body or we have freedoms too, right? And these drug addicts impinge upon our freedoms, right? And now a sufficient number of them, when you get dope heads like Joe Rogan and Elon Musk, both dopers, and they're coming on smoking dope in front of tens of millions of young people on it live, right? This is clearly fighting against the United States. This is clearly attacking the United States. You know what people always say about Joe Rogan? Not always, but let's say 80% of the time, when I say dope or Joe Rogan, and people go, yeah, but he has great guests. Great guests. Okay. You can't make up this stuff. So he's got great guests, right? So let's put it like this. Here's a great meal. Here's a great big old smorgasbord, 20 feet long, right? It's got all the best food in the world. Only the tea is poison, right? You know what I'm saying? So he's got all these great guests. I'm probably the only person in the world that's openly turned down any opportunity to go on Joe Rogan. Like I was on with Alex Jones one time. Alex Jones, I was on his show, and Alex Jones was like, I can put in a good word for you with Joe or whatever. You could find whatever I said because it would steal me on his site, I guess. And he said Alex Jones said he had known Joe Rogan for 26 years or something. I said something like, I don't know, whatever I said, it would be online. I'm not going to go on that dopehead show. Why would I? Seriously, I'm not going to do it. At some point, you have to draw a red line. Now, of course, the dopers are like, what are you talking about, man? Don't you understand? You can reach a huger audience. I'm like, I can do the math. Actually, I can do the math, right? The bottom line is, if there's nothing in your life that doesn't have a red line, like I'm not crossing that line. I'm not going on somebody's shows pushing dope to people, right? Especially young people all over the United States, and I see doped out. They can't even do basic stuff anymore, right? They can't do anything worthwhile because they're all doped up. And they're all for just open borders, laying on their mom's couch or something, right? And what are they doing? Watching Joe Rogan, and they're watching Rocket Boy Elon Musk, right? The super rich guys that are like, yeah, Mr. MMA or whatever, Joe Rogan and Rocket Boy. Does anybody actually do the math on Rocket Boy? How can he actually do all these things and do all these shows and be on Twitter and be super rocket dude and super boring company guy and super Tesla guy and all these different things and be on dope, right? He's talked about his ketamine thing and his, he smoked dope right on Joe Rogan. You know what I mean?
Well, in every movie too.
Let's do the math. Let's just do the math, right? There's not enough hours in the day, right? I haven't had time for 2 weeks to in the last 2 weeks, I've had time to put one Substack article up in the last more than 2 weeks, right? And I'm not running Tesla. I don't have gigafactories to run. I'm not putting rockets into space. I've only had time to I'm barely getting enough sleep, right? You know what I'm saying? There is no way on planet Earth that the mathematics adds up that he can do all those interviews and all this stuff and put rockets in space. Something ain't right. I think he's an actor. I think it's quite obvious, actually.
No, I think he's a very high level asset and high level assets will work different sides at different times. I know that from my own experience from, FBI, CIA, sometimes simultaneously. And if you're not real careful with high level assets, they'll start running you.
Oh yeah. Because as you know, the puppet Pinocchio, Pinocchio is one of the most famous books ever written. Believe it or not, I've got one of the originals actually. You know, because Pinocchio is the puppet that comes to life, right? And what does Pinocchio do when it comes to life? Attacks the maker or immediately. You know, because when the puppet on the string gets like Charlie Kirk, he starts to get a life of his own. He can start operating you. You know, it can be a tug of war, or he can be a happy puppet. Will he be a happy puppet, or will he be a puppet that tries to drag you down and make you the puppet, or will it be a tug of war, right? But often, as you know, in special operations, sponsoring unconventional warfare, when the United States, you know, the seventh phase of unconventional war is what's called demobilization, when you get the army that you've built up to lay down their guns and not be guerrillas anymore, right? And that seventh phase is when they often turn around and kill the A-team or the CIA guys or whatever, right? Because the puppet now has a mind of its own and it's got guns, right? So yeah, but that's the thing. They have to be very careful when they put puppets in place, because sometimes a puppet, as you know, and as you know too, from people that actually run spies, sometimes if the puppet is more psychologically adept than the case officer, he can end up flipping it and he'll be the case officer for the case officer. The puppet will be running, like you said, the puppet will be running the agent, right?
Yeah, I think that's originally what happened with the FBI. In fact, I saw that happen at different levels. So you didn't hear the beginning of the show, but I was talking about how Brown University looks like the China virus Psyop as well. How, you know, when it first happened, I was saying China virus too, but we actually know it's the Fort Detrick DARPA, you know, CIA Fauci virus brought over there, released over there, that it is democide, but they never really let anything be completely solved, because they didn't want a rally point. After 9/11, the enemy learned that the Twin Towers were the rally point. That's why they took the towers off the TSA patch. So no rally points anymore, just kind of never really figuring out what it is. And that's exactly what Brown looks like to me, is now they're slowly letting out that they'll let out that, yeah, the guy was screaming Allah Akbar. But Brown had just done a big report criticizing Israel and Gaza. So again, to me, this looks like a very sophisticated deep state psyop that is slowly unfolding, but we'll never see resolution. Do you agree with any of that?
I'm not paying attention to what happened to Brown. I just vaguely know that something happened. I mean, I know nothing because I've been so busy over here. What happened exactly?
So there was a shooter who shot multiple students, but Brown has surveillance cameras all over the place, and they didn't even have a suspect. They had one guy, then they released him. It's just a total. Then they got FBI agents lining up, kicking the snow. It's a joke. It's a complete joke. It's a total false flag. But again, I think it looks like the false flag of COVID, which they wanted to label as the China virus, but it really wasn't the China virus. It was the Fort Detrick DARPA democide weapon. That's what it looks like to me.
There's so many false flags now that it's just over the top. I mean, I think there always have been. We just see them more.
I quote you as false flags are the rule, not the exception.
No, that's true. That's true. They're the rule, not the exception. And I think they've always been quite intense. Like for instance, and then there's the green flag attacks, right? A green flag is when you know it's going to happen, but you let it happen anyway, or you provoke it to happen, right? Like Pearl Harbor was a green flag attack. We absolutely 100% knew it was going to happen, and we 100% provoked it. We wanted to execute War Plan Orange, right? And so this was, most people I think by now realize that Pearl Harbor was a green flag attack. The idea that our guys were just out there golfing and going to church on Sunday, you know what I mean? That's not what happened. And because we needed to cause this belly. And actually Japan wanted to actually be on our side. They were very open about it. You look at all the old, or many of the old headlines in the newspapers from those days, you know, like the 7 days before, there was a headline, you know, Japan may attack, or I think Japanese may attack over the weekend was a headline. It was in the Honolulu Advertiser, I think, maybe about December 1st or something like that, November 30th. And it was just like a week before the attack. It was a Sunday before. And actually, I published that more than 10 years ago. And somebody said, oh, you got a nice Photoshop there, how you invented that. And I'm like, it's not a Photoshop. Go to your library and look it up on microfiche. I mean, you don't have to take my word for it. Go to some library and find it on the old microfiche. I mean, it's clearly real.
Or go watch the old court martial of Billy Mitchell with Gary Cooper, where he predicts the whole thing, right after World War I, way ahead of time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, because that was War Plan Orange, right? War Plan Orange was coming to pass. War Plan Orange. I'm not sure exactly when. I've got the book about War Plan Orange, but I'm not actually sure when War Plan Orange really started. I mean, there's a book. I mean, because arguably you might say it started when Commodore Perry was in Japan. He opened Japan in 1854. I've got his original reports to Congress, and I got all his original maps and all that stuff. It's fascinating. But then by the 1890s, the United States clearly was getting ready to they wanted to attack Japan, but it took a long time. And certainly by the 1920s, they were fully very serious about it, right? They were doing, naval exercises and preparing to, and this isn't the sort of war plans that we have against Liechtenstein and every other country in the world, right? The contingency plans. This wasn't just contingency plans, right? This was actual war plan, like we're going to attack Japan. It's just a matter of setting conditions, which took generations. Keep in mind, we're talking about thinkers that don't think like what we're going to do next summer or 2 or 3 summers from now. These are people that think what we're going to do. My son joined the Navy today. By the time he's an admiral, maybe we'll attack, and maybe it'll be the next generation, right? They're doing over the horizon thinking, right? In fact, Catherine Austin Fitts, she's one of the very few people that say the obvious, that some of these plans that unfold actually are centuries old. They're not anything. So people that are like, oh, this all came from Obama or whatever. Obama is a nothing. He's a leaf on an autumn. He's an autumn leaf on a tree, right? He's just a little leaf that came and goes, like Trump comes and goes, right? But on the larger thing that's happening, this is something that's going on for centuries, not just years. And if you want to understand,
I think even millennia, I think when you see the depth and breadth of it, it's satanically sourced. It's powers.
Yeah. Over time, you can clearly see there's a good versus evil component, which is quite intense, right? And it's so routes, resources, and mythology, and this evil component is quite serious, right? Like some of the stuff you see on the streets around here are quite intense. I wish you could come over with me and spend a few days walking around here, or we could go to San Francisco and see similar. But it's just debauchery. Like the Afghan guy telling me today, he's like, look at this, they're smoking dope on the street. He's like, look at this, look at the women here smoking this thing,
And that's the funny thing about, there are so many neocons watch out for the Islamification of America, but they don't understand what's bringing that about, because on its own, Islam would have no hold in America if America was still America.
That's right. And part of this is just dumbing America down. And it's not just the Chinese doing it. The Zionists have a huge component in it. Now, keep in mind, Zionism and Chinese, these are jungles in and of themselves. Like, what is Chinese? We could spend a day going over what is even Chinese, defining that, right? But then Chinese Communist Party gets to be easier to define, right? So like the Chinese of Taiwan, they're not here to take over the world, right? I mean, I would love to have Taiwanese neighbors. You know what I mean? They're not like Chinese Communist Party or something.
So let me ask you then about Venezuela and Trump's policy there. So I think that's good, hitting they should be doing the container ships. That's where the real issue is. The cigarette boats, the go fast boats aren't going to make them on their own, but those are combatants with WMD. I agree with that. I've seen other snowcap guys, former DEA guys like me, who said, no, Venezuela didn't do us any harm. No, Venezuela is a transshipment point for China and for the global cabal. So what's your take on all of that?
Well, routes and resources in mythology. In this case, it's routes and resources, right? Because Venezuela, a lot of energy there. Keep in mind, also, there's many reasons why this is a hot spot. and they're not the only hot spot, as you know. There's Thailand. They're all related. Taiwan, it's all related, right? And but the energy down there in Venezuela and neighboring Guyana and that sort of thing, and the relationships that Venezuela has with Cuba and China and Iran and Russia. I mean, they're all, this is the thing. Those ecosystems, the Chinese and others, are growing in it. The Monroe Doctrine is long gone. Americans that keep waving a Monroe Doctrine flag as if it's like still real. You know what I mean? Seriously, it's gone, right? It just does not exist. It's just a word anymore, right? It's a phrase, Monroe Doctrine. You've got Chinese building, they own a port off of Florida in Bahamas. We went down there a couple of years ago, right? They're in Antigua, all these, they're running ports in California, right? I mean, they're running ports in Panama, in Argentina, and in Europe, right? The BRI is quite serious, right? And they're really playing. They're playing smart. They're methodically getting routes and resources, ports, getting more influence. Now keep in mind, when it comes to Gaza, that's all about the energy, the Suez Canal, of course, Ben Gurion Canal, and about the Indo-European corridor. And Israel is a very serious location that people have wanted to own that area for a long time. Even without the Suez Canal, the location of, just like Panama, even without the Panama Canal, Panama would be very valuable because of the location, and it's got a lot of gold, and it's got a lot of copper, and you can build a road down to Colombia. And people are always like, you can't build a road to Colombia? That's impossible. I'm like, yeah, okay, I don't know. It's not impossible. It's very simple, right? They're like, no, the Darien Gap, don't you understand? Yeah, I'm in the Darien Gap all the time. I understand. It's very simple to build a road through the Darien Gap, and they're working on it. They just opened another bridge down near Yavitsa. In fact, I'm the one that found the bridge a couple of years ago, right? They just opened it a couple months ago, right? Then there's another bridge they're working on. I'm not talking about the bridge over the Panama Canal, Bridge 4, that one too. I just got an update on that hours ago, right? But then that's at the Panama Canal. But then further down Highway 1 in Darien Province, closer to Colombia, Darien Province borders Colombia, you can build a road through there. That's simple. That's simple as pie. That's just the function of money and doing it. It was interesting. One fella told me a few years ago, he somebody who's grew up in Panama. He's like, it's impossible to build a road through the Panama Canal. I mean, through the Darien Gap. I'm like, look, our toes are practically in the Panama Canal. He's telling me that when we're standing next to the Panama Canal. You're telling me that we can't build a road through the Darien Gap, and we're looking at the Panama Canal. You know what I mean? The Panama Canal, which they opened in 1914. It's like we can easily build a road and a railroad.
It's a generational thing now. It's like, we can't control the border.
I'm just like, what? I tell you, if I had a long table of generals and admirals, and I said, I want to plan and I want to ASAP on how we're going to close the Darien Gap. If anybody in there told me we can't close the Darien Gap, I'd say, you're dismissed, General. Thank you. Close the door when you leave. Right? That would be it for his career. I mean, because one highly capable captain who's well-resourced could close the Darien Gap. There might be leakers that come through, of course. Got it. Everybody got it, right? But when it comes to closing the Darien Gap, you got one thing on your side: God's great obstacle of the Darien Gap, right? I mean, seriously, there are no roads through it right now. There are paths and whatnot, but it's quite easy. There's choke points down there. This is easy to close off 99%, right? You can close off 99% of the Darien Gap with 1% of the effort. And then I'd let the other squirters get through and we'll collect them in different places, right? Because keep in mind, even if once you make it through the Darien Gap, you still have to make it up and you have to cross over the canal and all these other bridges. There's choke points everywhere, man. You're going to scarf up most of them, right? They're just not going to be able to make it if you're even halfway serious. Again, that's why when people, they immediately impugn their reputations when they say things like the Darien Gap is impossible to close. I'm like, again, I can't take you seriously after that. You know what I mean? That's like people that tell me that, that they can smoke dope and go take a calculus class and do just as well as they ever would. Right? I'm sorry. I don't believe you. And I would never want you with me out doing anything dangerous. Right?
Yes. Yeah. So I've got a listener asking, does the manipulation issue brought up by the Bernstein and Rodi elections in Venezuela election manipulation having to do with the action in Venezuela. Suppose they're referring to Tucker Carlson talking about that Trump was going to announce a military action against the country of Venezuela as opposed to against the Go Fast boats.
Yeah, I mean, what's going to happen with Venezuela? I don't know. It'll be quite serious, whatever it is. And I think it could obviously spin out of control very quickly, obviously. And again, there's a lot more going on besides Venezuela. There's also obviously the Chinese have influence all in the Caribbean now, right? Whether it's Bahamas or not just the Caribbean. I mean, they have. Yeah. They're all over the United States.
You said Antigua. I remember doing maritime ops with 2nd to 7th in Antigua, and now China's got maritime ops there. So, well, but that to me, that is in our sphere of influence, and those are righteous operations. Do you agree with that, or with what Trump's doing, Hexas doing, or no?
I don't know what they're doing actually, because every time I'm able to actually see something and audit it, they're lying. Every time I actually know what they're talking about. So keep in mind, most of what they're doing, I have no way to audit most of it, right? But when I see them doing something that I actually know something about, it's just never true. It's like, for instance, Trump saying that he brokered the peace treaty between Cambodia and Thailand. Well, I happen to know something about that, and it was a lie, right? And I called it out immediately. And first of all, as you can see now, they're shooting at each other right now, right? And in any case, he didn't broker that a temporary pause in activity. That thing is far from over, because this is about routes and resources. It's not about the temple on the border between Cambodia and Thailand. That's not what it's about. It's about the energy in the Gulf of Thailand and that sort of thing.
No, that makes sense. There. So I'm very disappointed in Trump in lots of areas, but not that one in particular. Are you familiar with the Turtle Island FBI takedown as well? Because that just looks like another FBI setup of what they've done against hapless Muslim American kids as well, where they create this whole script and then execute and say they've taken down a terrorist cell. I mean, the Turtle Island terrorist group looks like the most ridiculous thing I've seen, and I think it's to cover up Bongino leaving.
I don't even pay attention to the vast majority of the garbage going on. Like Candace versus what's her name, Erica or whatever. You know what I mean? It's just a clown show, and it's a diversion from what's actually deadly serious, right? It's a clown show, and so it's quite. These distractions will burn up all of our time. And that's why I don't even know these little things that happen all the time, these disputes about, whether a guy was on the roof shooting at Charlie Kirk, whatever. There's only so much time I'm going to devote to that. And then I'm going back to the basic principles, right? Routes and resources and mythology. And we know that we're being lied to on a constant basis. We know that false flags are the norm, actually. We know that that's just truthful, right? We know that we can't trust anything coming out of that entire ecosystem. So we shouldn't burn up all of our time looking at it. We should more look at the larger picture and adjust ourselves to it, right? Adjust our actions to clearly, for instance, Trump wants dope to be, basically he wants it around America. He pushed Amendment 3 in Florida as an example, which was the amendment to legalize cannabis. And so it didn't go through, but I mean, he was pushing it. And so this is a big deal.
Yeah, he may change it from a Schedule 1. My biggest seizures, 10,000 pounds of marijuana or 4,000 pounds of marijuana, because it's a Schedule 1. And of course, Kika Camarena, our agent, was tortured and killed over marijuana.
Yeah. What happened?
Oh, a long time ago, DEA agent, former Marine, was tortured and killed by the Sinaloa cartel over burning marijuana fields in Mexico.
I may remember that. Is that the one where the DEA guys went down there and captured the doctor?
Yeah, that's right. I actually knew, operated with some of those guys. Yeah, but back when DEA really was a real functioning organization. Yeah. Yeah.
And they realized somebody would reach out and touch them, right?
Yeah. And now, of course, there's nothing.
Mm. Yeah. Well, I need to call it a night. It's been a long day, and but I'll be around for the next month or so, more available than I normally am. If you
Great.
have any
Yeah.
other, yeah.
Yeah, we'll have you back. I appreciate you jumping on. I know you're tired. Thank you so much, and have a Merry Christmas.
Thanks, and Merry Christmas from Netherlands.
All right. Good to see you, Mike. All right, there's the great Michael Yan. Always very insightful. That the ecosystem is, totally corrupt. Totally makes sense. That's the FBI Turtle Island entrapment. Same script, different marks. Because there's it's really clear that they have infiltrated this organization, set it up, and everything that's happening is just to give them another counterterrorism win as Bongino leaves. And so maybe people will pay less attention to the debacle of the Brown investigation, which again, I think is actually like the China virus, that they're going to slowly unfold and then say, oh, look, we figured it out as well. Even Steven Crowder, who has come out just like Nick Fuentes and said, oh, yeah, I think Tyler Robinson shot Charlie Kirk. Anybody who thinks that is either a moron or a Fed, and neither of those guys are morons, as I have said often. So the setups are, like Michael has said, they are the norm. And there's a new article out talking about how a top FBI official was called the Antifa movement the biggest domestic terror threat to the U.S., but they don't know anything about it. Michael Glasheen, operations director of the FBI's National Security Branch, said Antifa was the agency's primary concern and the most immediate violent threat that we're facing, but they don't know anything about it. And so interestingly enough is they haven't infiltrated it. The FBI's infiltrated everybody, just not them. Why? Because they are in on it. So remember, when Ray finally stepped down, that's when Patriot Front disbanded. Patriot Front, the same guys who were using the exact same uniforms as FBI cadets at Quantico, they are controlling this. But again, people are still saying we need the FBI to investigate this. It's just like the guy who shot the National Guard guys, and God bless that one of them's recovering. The CIA vetted the guy, brought him in. The FBI passed on him. So how many failures of intelligence and security until someone realizes they are in on it? Don't have a lot of time, but I just also do want you to remember that this is the anniversary of Bastogne. The Battle of the Bulge began on December 16th. That was the German Hitler's fanatic effort to come, and the 101st paratroopers against German Panzer tanks. And there's a famous story there where there was as an entire U.S. armored division was retreating from Germany in the Ardennes forest when a sergeant and a tank destroyer spotted an American digging a foxhole. The GI PFC Martin, who's the 325th Glider Infantry Regiment. I remember when I used to wear my glider patch before we got our berets, looked up and said, "Are you looking for a safe place?" "Yeah," answered the tanker. "Well, buddy," he drawled, "just pull your vehicle behind me. I'm the 82nd Airborne, and this is as far as the bastards are going. Airborne all the way." I am a proud airborne soldier as well. And that's a true story. And the other true story is, of course, when the 101 was surrounded there and the Germans came to get General McCullough's surrender, his answer to that was nuts. And of course, the battle begins on the 16th of December, goes through the siege of Bastogne, 22nd of December. Then the 25th of December, Christmas Day, reinforcements arrive. Although 101st denies today that they were rescued by Patton, they were doing very fine on their own. Thank you very much. Eisenhower said no other general in the world could have pulled off, and no other army what Patton and his 4th Armored Division did in a 19-hour, 150-mile-long journey coming out of a fight. Just amazing heritage that we should always be aware of and pay attention to. Lastly, I wanted to say how much I appreciate all of you sticking with me. I know I'm very controversial, and while numbers are really down, I really appreciate everybody sticking with me. So remember, by bravery beyond belief, haired world warriors saved the world from Satan's sock puppet, initiating Israel's scriptural statehood in a day, activating apocalypse and extinction level end times. But Nephilim never sleep, and now their nanobots needle us neurologically, while our prostituted Praetorian Guard pulls pimped, pusher, and pedo puppet strings, while our military mRNA mass murders, and the police prosecute those they should protect. Time to ante up and kick in like the men of the 54th. Be like Baguette, who hanging from a chute shot a strafing Zero pilot between the eyes with his pistol. Best dive bombing 2 Jap carriers Midway Day. Stand like Sugar and Gordon, who threw ice ask and then went willingly to their deaths and bought Durant's life with their own. Rise like Rescorla, who heeled out of the Ayatrang Valley of Death to die, saving hundreds on 9/11. The collapse has commenced, the cull begun, but so has the crucibling. And crucify means to magnify 1,000 times. So fight out or warrior up. I'll see you fortunate few, you band of brothers on the beach.